At this point, we have to laugh. There's nothing else left to say. WWE is obviously trying to go out of business because there is no other explanation as to why what we saw today had to be produced. All right, cuckolds? So without further ado, it's Monday, which means it's time for the Haters Monday Night Raw review. Cucks this. Let's get to it and let's do it segment by segment. Pin this bitch. So the show starts out with a bunch of jobbers. Jey Uso comes out and says he will be the champion. Then CM Punk comes out and says he will be the champion. Then the segment ends. That was basically it. CM Punk came here just to say, hey, Jey, bring it. That's it. Nothing else happened. It wasn't entertaining. Nobody could possibly enjoy this. Jey Uso fucking sucks. The fans are over him at this point. CM Punk is almost 50 years old, and he sucks too, and nobody would want to watch this match. As a matter of fact, I personally couldn't give a shit who wins this match. The title's meaningless. The feud is meaningless. Jey is meaningless. CM Punk is meaningless. All of it is meaningless. Cucks. This is a mid-card match. And then at some point, Jey Uso misuses the term spin the block because he is not hood at all, right? It's a terrible opening segment. He says, you spin the block, right? And he uses it in the wrong context. He doesn't even know what the fuck it means. He's just a fucking loser. The Usos are just two dorks who, like, this is a phenomenon the hater has noticed in America. When people are complete losers, right? They try to act urban. It's the weirdest thing ever. Like, people that aren't hood, when they're losers, when they're dorks, to hide the fact that they're dorks with no personality, they act this way. That's the only explanation I can give. This would explain a lot of that entire Samoan family who pretty much has prostituted the Samoan heritage they claim to be proud of in order of culturally appropriating an entire different group of people. I'm done with the Samoans. They make me sick to my stomach. Not the people of Samoa, of course. I'm talking about the Anoa'i family, the fucking embarrassment of the Isle of Samoa. Anyways, after this, it's time for this week's Judgment Day backstage segment, because we gotta have one of these every week. Dominic is upset that he has to face the winner of Rusev versus Penta. To be completely honest, I completely understand. How many times does Dominic have to beat Rusev? How is Rusev getting continuous title shots despite losing every match? Yes, Dominic cheats in his matches, but that's just how it works. What, you're gonna keep having matches until Dominic, wins fair and square? That seems dumb, but whatever. I digress. The match is gonna happen tonight. The match meaning Rusev versus Penta. The winner of that is gonna wrestle Dominic. So we'll see how that goes later, cucks. Meanwhile, the tag team champions, or the former tag team champions, I should say, JD McDonough and Finn Balor, are pissed off because they're blaming Dominic for costing them the match. Fair enough, you know what I mean? But nothing comes of this. These segments are just people talking. Nobody ever actually gets angry, so it's a complete waste of time. After this, it's time for the actual match. The match goes on, the match between Rusev and Penta, that is, for a long time, and then it's ruined by Rayo and Bravo Americano, which are the two lackeys of El Grande Americano, as played by Ludwig Kaiser. Basically, the Americanos beat their ass. Ludwig Kaiser poses in the middle of the ring. It's very obvious that it's Ludwig Kaiser. And then after this, the Americanos are just standing there like idiots, waiting to be attacked. Rusev comes back and obliges them. He attacks them, and so does Penta. And then they tease a moment that Rusev is supposed to attack Penta, but he doesn't, because Penta and Rusev become friends by fighting Los Putos Americanos. So after this, we get an LA Knight promo backstage, right? The promo is decent, but the problem with this promo is that it has no basis on reality. This is a Fantasyland promo. At this point, LA Knight is ruined beyond belief. He's ruined beyond repair, might I add. LA Knight hasn't won a match of any meaning since he beat Logan Paul for the US title. LA Knight, motherfucks, is a loser, okay? He is a loser. Do you understand me? He is not someone that anyone here can take seriously. I don't understand why this is even happening anymore. I don't get when wrestlers don't take into account their performance and the general elements of the storyline. Like LA Knight, you'd think this guy's been undefeated for 5 years, the way he talks. I'm not talking about he shouldn't have any confidence. I mean, obviously he shouldn't, but I'm talking about he doesn't even acknowledge the fact that he lost fair and square. Like, when The Rock would lose by cheating or fair and square, he'd come out the next day and be like, The Rock got his ass whooped. It wasn't the first time. It sure as hell won't be the last, right? He would acknowledge his losses. LA Knight just keeps making threats that he doesn't back up. You know, he's just like CM Punk, basically. They're the exact same character. They're these two guys who almost win and then never do. LA Knight just comes out every week and he says, I'm going to be champion one day. Then he gets opportunities and loses every match. At a certain point, you have to start asking yourself, why does this asshole keep getting opportunity after opportunity? You know, I like LA Knight, but he doesn't deserve the things that he gets. He's just there. He has like a record that's marginally better than Tozawa. You know, he wins like 1 every 5 matches. And it's usually like an irrelevant match. It'll be him against like Ludwig Kaiser without the mask on. He'll win that match barely. Then he'll go and lose to like everybody else that matters. This is really bad. And quite frankly, I'm getting over it, motherfucks. I don't give a flying fuck anymore. He basically says he's going to win, and he's coming after the guy that's going to win the championship. After this, Heyman is backstage talking to the Bronns. Bronn Breaker asks a very valid question of why is it that we got screwed out of the Battle Royal. Paul Heyman gives him a lie. He's like, why fight 20 guys when you can fight 1? Gee, I don't know. Because you can fight 20 guys, lose, and then fight the 1. It's just one more opportunity. Imagine if Paul Heyman brought the same energy, the same argument to someone that wants to win the Rumble. Why fight 30 guys? What do you mean, why fight 30 guys? So I can win the Rumble, main event WrestleMania. Well, you can main event night 1 by begging like a little bitch, right? And then the other wrestler's going to say, well, it doesn't count because it's night 1, and I don't want to beg like a little bitch. But Paul Heyman, the character is too far gone. Paul Heyman as a manager has been exposed. Like last week and the week before that, all of it was exposed. Paul Heyman effectively turned on the World Heavyweight Champion to sign with a guy that might one day become the World Heavyweight Champion. How much sense does that make? From the manager's perspective, I mean, I guess like he wasn't in on it, but nevertheless, right? The idea is if he's the manager, he should petition for his new client. But instead he's saying, we'll just wait until it's time. Well, why did Bronn Breaker turn on Seth Rollins? Right? What is the motivation? They haven't explained that yet. You know? They haven't explained it. The understanding would obviously be that Bronn Breaker turned on Rollins because he's tired of being a lackey, which is the same thing as saying he's tired of waiting for his turn. Now Paul Heyman says, wait for your turn. And he's like, okay, right? Bronn Breaker is one of the dumbest people of all time in kayfabe. After this, Paul Heyman reveals to him that he's going to have an important match. And after Bronn Breaker says, go get me a match with that guy, right? And then it's going to be tonight, and it's going to be LA Knight versus Bronn Breaker. And then for some reason, Bronn Breaker is happy. He's like, yeah, what, you have a match with LA Knight? The guy that you've beaten before, the guy that's lost to everybody, the guy that doesn't help you get closer to your prize and to your goal whatsoever, right? If Paul Heyman had said, you have a match today against the returning Edris Enofe from NXT or the returning Ridge Holland, nobody would care. So why do they care if it's LA Knight? LA Knight is not this big deal anymore. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's true. Bronn Breaker was reacting like he won the lottery. He's like, yeah, I get to wrestle LA Knight. You've been wrestling him for like 2 months. You know? You've been wrestling for 2 months and no one's given a flying fuck. So that's the problem that I have with this. Like, he wants the title. Heyman's like, you're not getting the title. He's like, well, get me something. You can wrestle LA Knight. Haha, yeah. Like, that's how stupid the writers are of this, right? Anyways, they show an Asuka vignette hyping her up. 10 years of never drawing a fucking dime, you know? They make a mention of the fact that she had like a 914 day or something win streak. I don't know if this is like a dig at Goldberg. I don't really give a flying fuck, to be honest, but it doesn't matter, right? We all remember Asuka being a big deal for a couple of years, and it's been all downhill since there. She's had her moments, but quite frankly, Asuka is not this like legendary wrestler, right? We're going to remember her as a girl that came around and wrestled, but she hasn't had any big moments. You know, a lot of people forget that wrestling's all about the big moments. Like Cena is not a great champion and a great wrestler because he was a 17-time champion. Nobody gives a shit when he won the title against Edge for the 3rd time. Nobody remembers that. It's the moments that he's been a part of, right? The moments are what matter, you know? There's wrestlers out there, like, for example, Dolph Ziggler, who nobody gives a shit about, like, the fact that he's a multiple-time Intercontinental Champion. It's the moments. It's the cash-in. It's the Survivor Series, you know? It's the moments. That's all people care about. Nobody gives a shit about the actual matches, motherfucks. So with that being said, I don't have much more to say about this, but Asuka has been here for 10 years. It feels like she's been here for 3 because nobody's given a flying fuck. And also, like, of those 10 years, she's been gone for like several years here and there, you know? Like, she always misses a lot of time. Anyways, good for her, though. Pierce is talking to the Judgment Day, and he's saying that one of you is going to face Sheamus tonight because both of you illegally eliminated Sheamus last week from the Battle Royal. JD volunteers immediately. I like this a lot. I'm not saying that JD is the next big star, but I like the character turn, right? He was like, I'll fight Sheamus. And then Finn Balor was all surprised and happy, right? Which was a good way to play off the idea that Finn Balor has no interest in fighting Sheamus, and he's happy that JD is volunteering, right? That's good. This makes JD look good, right? It makes him look brave in a time when Judgment Day is full of pussies, right? Because there is something to be said about Dominic Mysterio, right? But he is fundamentally a pussy. You know what I mean? He doesn't have the believability of Eddie Guerrero, so his character is that of a pussy. Everyone in that fucking faction is just pussies now. So JD is like the interesting like hero that's coming out, and he's basically saying like, "Yo, I'm JD McDonough, and I'm not a pussy." So they make JD versus Sheamus for later tonight up in this bitch. After this, it's time for another match. Nikki Bella, which looks really weird today. She looks like a dude, kind of. It's very odd. She's got this like weird dude-like face. I don't know how to explain it, but it's her versus Roxanne Perez. This is an opportunity to remind all the listeners of The Hater that Nikki Bella, for those that don't know, is a former multiple-time women's champion, I think multiple time, and she's a Hall of Famer. Obviously an undeserved Hall of Famer, but nevertheless, she's a Hall of Famer. So this really like ruins the Hall of Fame, and I'll explain why. Nikki Bella, even though she's obviously a little older now, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna pretend that she's like in her prime. She's like probably in her early 40s. Let's Google it. She is 41, motherfucks, 41. And Asuka is 44. So Nikki Bella is 3 years younger than Asuka. So Nikki Bella is by no means an old bag. You know what I mean? Nikki Bella is someone that, while not necessarily in the prime of her career, she's still in her physical prime, you know? She's like of that same age as like Charlotte and these people who are like in their late 30s, early 40s. So with that being said, the reality is that Nikki Bella is not being presented either as an old bag, right? She's not presented as like this old woman that's come back to wrestling. She's straight up presented as Nikki Bella, you know? Like the girl that used to be a champion, the girl that was, you know, a big deal, and the girl that is back to continue her career, right? It's not even presented like it's this like big deal. You know, it's not like, wow, she came out of retirement. It's not like when Trish Stratus came back. This is presented as a completely different thing. This is presented as Nikki Bella just came back. She took a few years off, and now she's back. Cuck sucks. So with that being said, Nikki Bella, the Hall of Famer, just lost to Roxanne Perez clean, effectively clean, because Roxanne's a heel, so she's doing like heel shit, but she didn't cheat, basically, right? She pinned her after doing a finishing move. The Pop Rocks, kind of like corner assisted. It's kind of hard to explain how it was. Basically, Nikki was bending over by the turnbuckle, and Roxanne like just kind of climbed the turnbuckle while she was bending over and pop rocked her ass, right? So the reality is that Nikki Bella, the Hall of Famer, just got pinned by an NXT jobber. You know what I mean? And somewhere above all of these women in the hierarchy is Stephanie Vaquer, who debuted like 3 days ago. So anyways, that's how much respect they have for Nikki Bella, but I don't give a flying fuck. Speaking of women that I don't give a shit about, right? After this, Raquel comes in, and the bad guys, her and Roxanne, start beating up Nikki Bella. And after this, of course, Vaquer comes to save her ass. Vaquer just basically comes back the same way that Rhea Ripley comes back, right? With a theme song, and she comes to save the day. Nothing comes of this. Speaking of boring-ass women, Lyra Valkyria and Bayley have another boring interaction. Lyra Valkyria needs to immediately be fired, or at least, put on hiatus and be sent to promo school because she can't cut a promo worth a shit, motherfucks. That's how it is. Lyra is just not good at her job. She's not good at wrestling either. I mean, she's okay in the ring, but nobody gives a shit. All the promos just sound contrived and not believable in the slightest. So with all that being said, that shit went down the way it went down. Nobody could possibly care about it, but yet here we are, cucks this. After this, we see another segment. Jimmy is mad at Jey because he only thought about himself, dog. Jimmy's like, yeah, you know, like, you were supposed to be me and you, Oos. And Jay's like, just standing there like an idiot. Jimmy's like, you know what I think? I think it's like, yo, you afraid of me, dog, right? He just says that to him, and Jey Uso's just like, all right, whatever, bro. So basically, Jimmy is insinuating that Jey Uso, the former world champion and Royal Rumble winner, is afraid of Jimmy Uso, the guy who has never done anything impressive by himself. Like, literally everything that Jimmy Uso has done, 100% of it, is because of Jey Uso, right? Now, I'm not saying that Jimmy didn't contribute, right? But it would be like if Matt Hardy went to Jeff and said to him, you were always jealous of me. It's like, dude, like, clearly Jeff Hardy is like the better one, right? He's the one that has more success, right? Or even Edge and Christian. Edge is clearly the one that has had more success than Christian, right? That's just how it is. I mean, that one's a little bit closer because Christian had success in TNA, but clearly Edge is like the Hall of Famer, you know what I mean? So no matter how you want to cut that shit, that's just the reality of it, motherfucks. The fact of the matter is the fact of the matter, cucks. So Jimmy Uso to suggest that Jey Uso is afraid of him is just absurd. Jey Uso has been better at him in the last 5 years at literally everything. So it's just a stupid thing to do. Anyways, after this, it's time for Bronn versus LA Knight. The match was not bad, but because LA Knight is a complete jobber, you already know which way this is going. The match had all the bells and whistles. They did all the cool moves, including the finish. The finish was great. Basically, LA Knight is going to go for that superstar or whatever, megastar elbow, and as he's going up for it, like as he's mid-jump, in other words, as he's committed to doing the move, Bronn Breaker does a kip-up, right? He does a kip-up, and then I'm like, oh, is he going to just spear him midair? That would have been pretty cool, but I actually thought the way he did it was even better. As a result of the kip-up, LA Knight has to kind of like adjust in the middle, of the air because he's not going to go for an elbow. So he kind of just goes and like rolls, right? He like lands and rolls. He turns around, gets speared 1, 2, 3 up in this bitch. So that's that. Bronn Breaker beats LA Knight. Good match, but not good for the good reasons, right? It was an interesting match in terms of like the moves they did. They both performed well, but it wasn't very impactful in the sense that it made absolutely no difference. If LA Knight had won this match, nothing would have changed. But you know that he's not going to win because Bronn Breaker is getting the push right now. So there you have it. I don't understand why like they couldn't do this and then also do a Bronson Reed match. Why not push both these guys at the same time? You have 3 hours. You have plenty of time to do the match, but whatever. It is what it is. I don't make the choices. Cuts this. After this, Dominic is seen talking to the Americanos, and then Pierce appears, and Dominic denies having anything to do with them, which is obviously not true. It's a complete waste of time. It's disrespectful. After this, it's time for another Jey and Jimmy promo, and basically now Jay's like, I'm sorry, Oos, right? But guess what? My plate's full, dog. But he says it politely. Basically, he's like, look, I can't just like deal with you anymore, bro. Like, we gotta go separate ways. What's the idea? He says, love you, Oos. And then Jimmy says, love you too, Oos. And then Jimmy Uso is like, okay with it, I guess. Who gives a fuck? One of them is gonna turn on the other. I could give a rat's ass what's gonna happen. The Usos suck balls. Anyways, after this, it's time for JD versus Sheamus. Another decent match. I will say what I gotta say. Not only did JD McDonough impress me not on the mic, I shouldn't say on the mic, but he impressed me as a character when he was like ballsy enough to fight Sheamus. You have to consider that it's these moments that can make or break a career, right? The reason why I was like one of the first ever John Cena fans, in my opinion, right? Definitely the first one in my school. And the reason why I liked John Cena was because, first of all, like I didn't like him when he was like ruthless aggression. Nobody liked him. People pretend, like everyone pretends, like trust me. A lot of people weren't around back then. But when you saw the match between him and Kurt Angle, you never thought this guy's gonna have a future. You absolutely didn't think that. You're like, this is just a jobber. You're like, he's on the same level as Maven. You know what I mean? He was on that level. Nobody gave a flying fuck. It wasn't, and that was true. He was irrelevant for many, many months. It wasn't until the Halloween episode where he dressed as Vanilla Ice that really got his career started. That was the moment. He dressed as Vanilla Ice and he would just rap backstage several times. People were like, all right, this guy kind of stands out, right? Then he just had like a throwaway match against Lesnar. This is when John Cena's career took off, right? And I'm not saying JD's going to have the same, but it was this reason that made me a fan. Brock Lesnar injured him in real life. And then John Cena had all these vignettes, right? And he was like, I'm coming for you, Brock, right? And he was like a full-blown rapper at this point. The rap part was irrelevant. The reason why I like John Cena, and I think a lot of people eventually got on board, because nobody liked him at the beginning. Everyone hated his ass, except for me and like 3 other people, right? But the reason why we liked him, me and those 2 other people, was because he showed balls, right? At this time, Brock Lesnar was the man, right? He was the guy. He was the next big thing, Brock Lesnar, the WWE champion. And John Cena was not like a mid-carder. He was one of the lowest card guys. He was an undercard nobody, right? He was effectively a JD McDonough, but he was willing to go after the big bad wolf, right? And he was like, I don't give a fuck, Brock, you hurt me. You think I'm going to just let that slide, right? And it was badass because it's like, that's how we feel as people sometimes. Sometimes the big guy oppresses the little guy. And the little guy says, you know what, fuck you. Yeah, you're the big guy, but I don't give a fuck. I'll fight you too, motherfucker. I'll fight the system. So JD McDonough, I understand that Sheamus at this point is not Brock Lesnar, but Sheamus is much bigger and stronger than JD. So this makes JD look really brave. In addition, JD has always been a solid in-ring guy. Nothing really crazy to go off on, but eventually he wins the match. How? Finn Balor comes and hits Sheamus while Sheamus is on the top turnbuckle with a shillelagh. And then as a result of this, JD McDonough does the Spanish fly and pins Sheamus. Great. The pin is whatever. He cheated, but the idea is JD McDonough is not scared to fight Sheamus. JD McDonough has obviously overachieved. JD McDonough should be like in a Santos Escobar type situation, meaning he should be released looking for employment elsewhere like Santos was after drawing like 0 dimes and stealing for this company for like 10 years. But JD is trying to make this work, right? Nobody would have ever thought that JD in the Judgment Day would have lasted this long. You know, he should have been like another Carlito. And quite frankly, I'm not saying he's much better in terms of like his contributions to the Judgment Day, but JD McDonough is now a multiple-time tag team champion, right? And quite frankly, he does hold his own because he's on the same level as Finn Balor, right? In my opinion, he's better. He has better moves. And Dominic Mysterio, like he's Dominic Mysterio, you know, he's like a different story completely. So anyways, that happens. After this, we go back to Pierce. He's talking to Maxine Dupree. He's saying that she has a title shot against Becky Lynch. Maxine says she wants it, but not now. And she has to consult with a friend about some bullshit about like whether she's ready or not. It's fucking stupid as fuck. She's had 3 title matches, you know, or at least 3 matches. And now she wants to know if she's ready. Great. Adam Pearce basically says you have a match whenever you're ready, right? Just hit me up and we're doing the match, right? Fair enough. She did beat Becky Lynch twice in a row. So, you know, twice in like 2 or 3 weeks. So that's kind of cool, right? After this, Judgment Day appears and they justifiably go to Adam Pearce and they say, and AJ Styles and fucking Dragon Lee are there as well. And they say like, look, we want a title shot. You know what I mean? And they're fucking justified because JT McDonough beat Sheamus. The way that Adam Pearce presented it earlier in the night was that Sheamus now has a gripe with him, so they got to deal with that shit first. Well, that shit's been dealt with. So now we want our title shot. AJ and Dragon Lee are there, and they agree. They're like, yeah, we want a title shot. Nobody gives a flying fuck what Dragon Lee is saying. And Pierce acknowledges this by saying, AJ, for you, I'll make the match. Like, basically, in other words, nobody gives a fuck that Dragon Lee is here. This is AJ's tag team title run, and Dragon Lee just happens to be there. Nobody gives a fuck. And then Judgment Day says, this will be your shortest reign, AJ. JD McDonough says, and he says, it'll be your only one, Dragon Lee, right? And that's how that went down. Now it's time for the final match, the main event up in this bitch. Earlier, before the main event, Asuka and Kairi, the Kabuki Warriors, show up and basically they're out there talking to Alexa and Charlotte, right? They say basically, look, we should be in the title match. The Bailey and the other broad don't deserve it, and neither do you two. And then Charlotte says, Asuka, I've changed. Nobody gives a fuck. Nobody asked you if you've changed or not. This is called, in logic, a non sequitur. Asuka saying, I want to be the champion. And then Charlotte says, like, I've changed. I want to fight you. Nobody cares. Nobody remembers what you were talking about. You've changed. Nobody gives a flying fuck. Charlotte is not entertaining, on the mic. Shut the fuck up. Just go wrestle. You're not your dad. You're a complete Nepo baby. Charlotte's an athletic broad, don't get me wrong. But quite frankly, she doesn't have enough skill athletically or entertaining-wise to, number one, main event WrestleMania, and number two, she definitely doesn't have the skill to make a full-time career out of this. That's just stupid. But anyways, she did anyway, so good for her, right? And the point is, like, Asuka's just standing there. She doesn't understand what the fuck these girls are saying. Asuka, I do give her props for being able to communicate her points, like, even though she has to, like, act like a retard in doing so. But the fact of the matter is, Asuka, as we were told tonight, has been in this country for 10 fucking years. I don't even know how you do this. I don't even know how you can live for 10 years in a country, right? 10 years and not learn the language. Why? Why wouldn't you? I understand she's traveling around and shit, but just fucking get Duolingo. You know what I mean? Get Duolingo, get a tutor that follows you around. You're a millionaire, And I get it. Asuka's a young woman. She's still in her 40s. I'm sure she's got a few more years left, and then she's probably going to go back to Japan. So for her, it's like, fuck it, why would I learn English? But it's like, it's 10 years of your life, man. And that's now. She might go for another 5 years for all we know, right? 10 years of your life to walk around confused? Why would you do that to yourself? Doesn't make any sense, and it's fucking embarrassing. Not only that, but let's not forget that if she learned English, their opportunities for her would be significantly bigger. She would have had a much bigger profile. She could learn to cut a promo. She could do commercials. She could do other things. But she doesn't learn English, so she's just a jobber, right? And then she's out there saying, oh, Goldberg is entitled to his opinion. Like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like, fucking learn English, broad. Anyways, after this, the match starts. It's a pretty decent match for what it is, but it is a Charlotte match. The match has a lot of false finishes, and basically what happens is the match is not with Asuka, of course. The match is with Bayley and Lyra Valkyria. So I'm thinking in this match, at some point, Bayley's going to snap and have like a Bayley moment, but that doesn't happen at all. Instead, what happens is she and Lyra get defeated by the tag team champions, who win with like the Joe Desatore calls it a double natural selection, but basically one's like a blockbuster and the other one's a natural selection. Charlotte does a natural selection, pins the girl that she does it to. I think it's Lyra. 1, 2, 3. And now, as we were told earlier, like if they win like one more week or one more match or something, Alexa and Charlotte are now the longest reigning tag team champions in terms of like title defenses, right? Because apparently they've been defending it up the ass. So who the fuck knows? Who the fuck cares? So that's how that goes, right? After the match, the Kabuki Warriors attack them and they attack Lyra as well. And then Bayley appears and they don't attack Bayley. So they're like, oh, what the hell's happening? You know what I mean? Maybe Damage Control is back. Who the hell cares? Who the hell gives a shit? Nevertheless, that doesn't change anything. The reality is what the reality is. And the reality is that Bayley's like, going crazy thing. I feel like at this point, it's basically abandoned. Like, maybe not fully abandoned, but whatever the fuck they had planned for that, I don't think that's happening anymore. You know what I mean? I don't think whatever split personality thing they had planned is going to materialize. I think now the new story is just straight up like Bayley's just there now. Again, she's just there again. It was all a complete waste of time and money. So, I mean, whatever. I'm not one to judge. Do it how you want to do it. But the facts are the facts. So with all that being said, nobody could give a flying fuck about this episode of Raw. The main event was a throwaway women's tag team match that wasn't that entertaining. There wasn't one star that wrestled today. CM Punk appeared, but he didn't wrestle. Even Jey Uso, who's not even a star, didn't wrestle. Gunther hasn't been seen since fucking August. It's now almost November. And the fact of the matter is, it still seems like it's going to be him versus Cena, which would be the most ridiculous thing ever, because that would mean that this guy had like 5 matches this year, and 2 of them are retiring Goldberg and Cena. Like, not even The Undertaker or Hulk Hogan should be able to do something like that. So I really fucking hope it's not him versus Cena, but all the reports are saying it is. And quite frankly, it's indicative of what WWE has come to, right? Like, it could literally be anybody else. Like, I don't give a fuck. Hire Edge for one more match. Hire Christian for one more match. Hire Jericho for one more match, right? Just have Cena versus Orton. Like, think about it. Who the fuck cares about Cena versus Gunther? Just have Cena versus Orton. Make the people happy. Or even Cena versus Lesnar. I don't know. I don't care. Like, I would never wish poorly on somebody, but I hope like Gunther like can't make it for some reason. Maybe he has like a visa issue, something not serious, But anyways, that's not here or there. The point is, this episode of Raw was complete shit. I hated every minute of it. It was unbearable. It was unwatchable. Basically no big deal wrestled at all. Like, nobody who's a big deal wrestled. Not even like, usually they'll have like one person who's like a big deal wrestle. Like, they usually have one person who might main event something wrestle like every Monday, right? It's like, maybe it'll be like Rhea Ripley, but like she'll main event once or twice in her career. And at the very least, we'll see that. I don't think there was one main eventer on the card today aside from CM Punk, and he's like a quasi main eventer. And quite frankly, he didn't wrestle or do anything impressive. He didn't even cut a good promo. So that being said, a complete disaster of a show. Wrestling keeps going downhill. Nobody could possibly give a flying fuck about any of this. So with that being said, take care of yourselves and go fuck your asses, motherfuckers. Deal with it. See you tomorrow, bitch boys.